Argentina, while it's well known for this,
Messi's hit! Oh! One more Messi moment!
It's also well known for this.
Argentina is in an economic crisis again.
A few years ago, if you exchanged $100 for pesos, you got back this.
Well, now I feel rich. How do you carry all this?
Argentina had hyperinflation.
Compared to a year ago, inflation has accelerated to 138.3%.
Prices keep going up and up.
The owner of this business decided to plaster the outside of his shop with 20 peso bills. And that's because that's a lot cheaper than buying wallpaper.
The story that was told was simple. Argentinians turned to stablecoins like USDT and USDC to save themselves from hyperinflation.
The Argentinian peso lost 98% of its value against the US dollar in the last 10 years. They just need something that will protect their families, that protect wealth.
Argentina has become the poster child for stablecoin and crypto adoption. Then, Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, came to power with a commitment to steer Argentina out of its recent economic crisis. And while Argentina still has high inflation today, the economy is doing much better. So I went to Argentina to answer a simple question. What happens to stablecoin adoption when hyperinflation goes away? But when I got there, I realized I was asking the wrong question. So when you're delivering cash, how much is a typical amount?
200,000.
$200,000?
Yes.
That's a lot. In Argentina, it's more, way more than just hyperinflation.
Empezaron hace 30 años las financieras o Cuevas a través de que por la cantidad de impuestos se por
I just arrived to Buenos Aires. One of the first things that tourists like me will do when they get here is go and change money on Calle Florida Street. As you walk down the street, you can hear cambio, cambio, casa de cambio. There it is. Those people are called Arbolitos, or little trees. They act as the agents or sales representatives for the exchange houses that line the street of Calle Florida. I came to Argentina expecting to witness more visible aspects of crypto or stablecoin adoption. Prices listed in USDT, crypto accepted here signs in stores, since Argentina has some of the highest crypto adoption in Latin America. Instead, daily life is still very cash-based. And these Arbolitos are the most visible aspect of a vast informal market and a network of informal exchange houses called Cuevas or caves that service Argentina's demand for dollars. People may come to Calle Florida because they think they can get the best rate in Buenos Aires. And for many years, due to exchange controls, the only place the Argentinian could buy dollars was on the blue dollar market. A key feature of Argentina's informal system is its parallel exchange rates. The blue dollar in Argentina is the unofficial exchange rate for US dollars. In an effort to protect against devaluation, Argentina has on and off for the past 30 years implemented policies of exchange controls, which limit dollar access. But when official dollars become scarce, it drives up the demand of dollars and the price on the informal market.
¿Qué precio?
El dólar recién lo están haciendo así, amigo.
Okay.
Since this market reflects real supply and demand, the blue dollar rate is usually much higher than the official one. For example, in 2023, if I withdrew money from an ATM at the official rate, I'd lose half of its value because the same amount of dollars could get me twice as many pesos in the blue market.
Let me just count.
Yeah, don't worry.
While it's a good deal for visitors, Argentinians' willingness to pay a premium to move their money into dollars reflects something deeper. A constant distrust in their own currency.
Do you also buy crypto?
Yes, USDT.
Inflation hits everyone, but the greatest impact is felt by workers, especially those on lower wages.
Shoppers in Argentina are pinching pesos to make ends meet.
Bear in mind, like 50% of the economy is off the books. And I think if you didn't have that, Argentina would collapse.
Argentina's struggle with inflation didn't appear overnight. It goes way back. Since gaining independence in 1816, the country has defaulted on its debt 9 times and gone through 9 different currencies. During one of its darkest crises in 2001, Argentina went through 5 presidents in just 12 days, a sign of just how deeply instability runs through its economy and the country.
In the late 1990s, they imposed, it's called convertibilidad, it's the convertibility of 1 peso to $1. In a way to decrease the level of inflation. The problem that to have 1 peso for $1, you have to produce dollars. And we didn't have that possibility. And at some point it exploded.
As the economy deteriorated, Argentinians began panic converting their pesos to dollars and rushing to withdraw their savings from banks. The the government responded by freezing accounts and forcibly converting dollar deposits into pesos. They called it Arbolitos, the little cage. Protests erupted across the country. Decades later, even as President Milei works to stabilize the economy and restore trust in the government, many Argentinians still choose to keep their money outside the banking system where the government can't touch it.
The corralito, it's present every day and leaves a deep scar on Argentina.
Inflation plays a part in Argentina's demand for dollar assets, and so does distrust of the government. But there's more to it.
People will get to know crypto because of inflation, but they will choose to use it because of taxes. In Argentina, we have a lot of taxes, but we have two really bad, something called débitos and créditos, which are debits and credits tax, which basically each time you receive a bank transfer from a company or you send money to a company, there will be a 1.2% tax on that banking transaction. The funny part is that the name of the bill that imposes that tax, it's the bill for incentivizing bank transfers, which is, the opposite. The second one, it's called ingresos brutos, brute income, which in some cases, and these are imposed by the provinces, it's up to 9% of the transfer, the government will take that money. So there is a lot of incentives on using cash. Apart from these two taxes that I mentioned, there is also one called bienes personales, which is personal goods. So you will pay like 2% or 1.2% of everything that you hold as an asset. And that is the main driver of cash adoption, and that's why the whole parallel market exists, because if you go full on the official market, you will be bankrupt.
For all these reasons, Argentinians want to keep their money outside the system. Argentina's government estimates that there is around $200 billion of so-called mattress dollars out there, or 5 times the reserves of the central bank. And now Argentinians are turning to stablecoins too, where Chainalysis estimates that Argentina has around $90 billion in stablecoin transaction volume. And when you talk to small business owners, you understand the necessity.
For the record, I do not vouch for tax evasion of any sort.
Bernie runs a creative agency in Buenos Aires. Most of his clients are abroad, so he gets paid in dollars. Like millions of Argentinians, he's stuck with this tension between formal and informal.
I envy sometimes when I talk to people that come from places that have reasonable economic policies, because there's some ease of doing business in their countries and they pay their share of taxes, and that's probably the end of the story. With us, it's always something that you have to figure out, like some puzzle, that you have in your hands, and your profitability depends on it. So you have to take it very serious.
So what happens to that money if you go through the traditional channels?
Let's say you had a fee of $1,000, to keep it simple. So the government, by its exchange policy, they get $500, and then with the $500 that you keep, you have to convert them forcefully into pesos. So then you lose also the possibility of reserving value in dollars at least. No, you don't even get that. And after that, taxes and other expenses. It started becoming more efficient to just find clients outside of our country, in part to avoid all these regulations that made it very difficult for us to stay afloat, even when providing a good service that was well paid for. But the problem is, how do I get the money out of it to use it for my expenses or to use it to pay my employees, for example?
For small business owners like Bernie, stablecoins like USDC become a tool for moving seamlessly between dollars and pesos.
Your ability to be successful does not depend anymore on the value that you provide. It depends on how smart are you with the handling of this crazy economic maze of policies. So I would say that stablecoins and the usage of technology-based payment solutions closed the chain of it all in the end.
Bernie is one of the lucky few who earn in dollars by exporting his services abroad, and for whom stablecoins are a digital entry point into the parallel economy. But inside Argentina, most people still earn in pesos, and most people still buy their dollars in physical cash.
I don't know if you know this, but Argentina is the second worldwide holder of actual dollar bills in the world. The US, then Argentina.
Even with the accessibility of stablecoins and the improvements to the economy under Milei, Argentina's parallel market still thrives because people still want to keep their money outside the formal systems. So if you want cash, it's on its way.
How long have you been doing this for?
1 year and a half.
I'm walking with a cadete, a young Argentinian delivering cash around Buenos Aires as a side hustle.
From 10 o'clock in the morning to 3 of the afternoon, maybe 4. There are many different offices. Every day I go to a different one.
So when you're delivering cash, it's always dollars?
No, sometimes it's pesos. Sometimes it's euros or pounds. But yes, most of it is dollars.
How much is a typical amount?
200,000.
$200,000?
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes, but that is the max.
Are you nervous when you do this?
At the beginning, the first week, but then no, I not even think about it.
Yeah. These cadetes are delivering money for the informal exchange houses that move the real volumes in Argentina. They're called Cuevas, the caves.
Soy cuevero, que sería operar en el mercado informal.
In an environment of distrust, Cuevas play the role of the banks. And even while the economy improves, Cuevas still continue to service the demands of the informal economy.
Porque es verdad que milei está volviendo los bancos a que sean bancos reales como los internacionales. El sistema bancario se está volviendo a poner serio, digamos. Va a decir que seguramente que las cuevas están con menos negocios o menos volumen, porque ahora los bancos funcionan como bancos, las SALICs tienen mejores licencias, pero en la práctica no está pasando. De hecho, estamos teniendo más.
The people who are customers of the Cuevas, they're using Cuevas for a specific reason, but it's not because they made money illegally.
Es puramente porque ofrecemos servicios que los bancos no. Por ejemplo, ya el cambio, vos no podés ir a un banco a cambiar dólares. Eso ya es importantísimo porque hay la mayoría de los argentinos tienen dólares.
The informal economy has strong network effects when so much of the country's wealth is held outside of the formal system. Argentinians can't go to the bank when dollars are scarce. They can't keep their dollars in the bank when they acquired them informally, and ultimately, they don't want to use the banks at all. So the government has tried to incentivize Argentinians to bring their money back into the formal system. In 2017, under President Mauricio Macri, the Argentinian government issued a blanqueo, which means whitening or bleaching, effectively a tax amnesty, allowing Argentinians to put their money back into the banking system. And that blanqueo was considered a success, raising $150 billion, of which $80 billion came from assets abroad, while almost $70 billion were assets located in Argentina. But then the government changed, currency controls came back, inflation spiraled, and anyone who trusted the amnesty learned their lesson.
Cuando cambió el gobierno, el kirchnerismo, toda la gente que blanqueó debe pagar alrededor del 40% sobre todos los activos blanqueados. La promesa era que no tenían que pagar impuestos sobre nada.
And while the Milei government is actively working to build trust,
es nuestra responsabilidad como gobierno generar los incentivos que inviten al ciudadano a entrar al sistema formal.
Decades of broken trust keep money outside the formal systems.
Frase que dije ayer, no me quiero volver a quemar con leche, y eso se refiere a que si cambia el gobierno, tiene miedo que les hagan pagar impuestos como pasó en el pasado.
So there's $200 billion in cash circulating in Argentina, and more of that demand is shifting to stablecoins. I'm curious to know how stablecoins have influenced and been used in the Cuevas business.
There is more demand for USDT than cash.
Stablecoins, in a way, have become a much more interesting and useful technology than buying dollar bills. There's this saying that they like this crunchy sound of the bill also to touch it. I think that's pretty much a legacy decision, and it's a shitty decision in my point of view because you are losing money all the time because you are not generating any yield on that. But that's a reality, and I think stablecoins in a way can be kind of a proxy to that. Instead of going to a cueva and get a dollar bill, actually have access to stablecoins, which also gives you a yield and it's much easier to move.
Manuel Boudreau co-founded Bello in 2021, an Argentinian crypto exchange and digital wallet.
We need to make this really accessible for everyone. Why don't we put everything together in one place and solve that pain point? That was kind of the whole idea behind Bello.
So while there are no USDT accepted here signs in Buenos Aires, you do see Mercado Pago signs and point-of-sale devices on almost every corner. And apps like Bello are enabling everyday spending of stablecoins for those who want to spend their stablecoins by building the infrastructure to seamlessly on and off-ramp between stablecoins and pesos.
This experience of, hey, we are going to change the world and everyone will be accepting stablecoins in their store directly. I started doing that in 2016, and it was impossible. It's easier to bridge the two worlds rather than, trying to reinvent the wheel in a way.
I was drawn to Argentina by stories of a fully on-chain future. But what I saw was actually a more deeply intertwined relationship between crypto and fiat. Just like Argentinians built infrastructure in the form of Cuevas to move in and out of pesos, now Argentinians are moving seamlessly between pesos and stablecoins as well. Stablecoin adoption isn't driven just by hyperinflation. It's driven by distrust. A century of broken systems, punishing taxes, and a formal economy that just doesn't work for its people. The crypto world calls Argentina a success story. High stablecoin adoption and growing volumes shows proof that crypto solves real-world problems. And all around the world, in similar market conditions, everyday people are turning to stablecoins for their needs. The solutions are bottom-up, but if we tell the wrong stories about what's driving adoption, we risk solving the wrong problems. In the next episode of Money Trails, we head to Bolivia, where similar conditions of dollar scarcity are driving stablecoin adoption in one of the fastest-growing crypto markets in the world.
Hicimos 3 cursos. Invitamos a una persona, nos capacitó a aprender a hacer la compra de esta cripto.